Hello lovely artists, I'm Bernadette. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we're diving into the magic of colour. I'll be selecting a split complementary palette from a photograph and working with soft pastels. I'll guide you in choosing a hero colour and then supporting it with a gentle harmony of orange and green. Hang around until the end when I'll give you some colour tips I've found handy over the past 35 years of creating art. So grab some supplies and work along with me. You can use pastels, paint, or even coloured pencils, and you can download the free PDF with the reference photo and tips from my blog with the link below. We'll be exploring how shifts in hue, saturation and value can add depth and emotion even with just a handful of colours. Reference photos, colour schemes and palettes are always an inspirational springboard for me. They're never rules that I stick to rigidly. So this video is for you if you love colour and like to become more confident using it. So let's have some colour play fun together. This is the photo reference we'll be using, and I'll also be creating this little mini abstract colour study. I'll be using a mixture of soft and hard pastels. These soft pastels are mostly Sennelier and Schminke, and the hard pastels are a mixture of Prismacolor NuPastels and GIOCONDA hard pastels. If you're interested in supply reviews, just leave a comment and I'll see if I can do that. I like to have mostly soft pastels with a few hard ones to add accents, usually toward the end of the finished artwork. And to start with, for a palette, I always choose the hero colour and then build the palette around that. For this, I'm going to start with this violet, and I'm always aiming to build harmony and contrast so that the colours feel like they really go together, but there's also an element of contrast for variety and interest, and you can use that for your focal points or whatever. So with the violet, I'm going to start with this violet as my hero colour, and I want a couple of versions of it. So I'll have a dark value, a mid value, and a light value. And what I'm doing is building a split complementary palette, and it's not exactly. So the violet I'm using is probably closer to the red violet than violet, but if it were there, we'd go to yellow, orange and yellow, green. If we're here, it's more like yellow and green. But I like these lighter versions, so I'm going to pick this really nice yellow-green just to contrast and give a pop to the violets. And then this yellow-orange. And that's just my base palette. There's no colour theory police that are going to come and arrest you if you get it slightly off. And let me tell you, they would have got me by now. These schemes are just meant to be a starting point for inspiration. So then in practice, I would actually expand on that. So these are really handy, these little colour tool strips. So you can see I've picked a yellow-orange similar to this. So anything in this family is actually fair game for this colour palette. For this palette, I wanted to keep it quite bright, so I've picked a few other yellow-oranges. I picked some other yellow-greens and some other violets. So let's build it out now, expanding the palette a bit. With violet, I really want that to be my darkest dark. So this is almost black, but you never know when you might need a strong contrast like that in your artwork. And we've already used these ones. does not want to work on this paper. So this is one of the GIOCONDA hard pastels. Just really handy for doing line work, which I'll demonstrate a little bit later. And then a nice mid-tone and a light violet. So now the yellow-green. This is, I like to go from darkest to lightest. This is actually probably the darkest, being it's another GIOCONDA. And with the hard pastels, I'm really looking for something that's almost the same as what I've got in the soft pastel, because I just want to use it for accents and I don't want to add to the colour palette at this point. And a nice neutral as well. They're just so handy. And of course, you've always got white. Now for the yellow-orange, this is a Prismacolor NuPastel as the darkest, and that'd be just handy for a little bit of line work. Again, it's almost the same as the Sennelier. And another neutral. I'm just making a quick little abstract colour study to show you how you might want to use this palette or something similar. So this is about colour, it's not really about the plums. I'm using the close-up image of the plums as a vague reference and a starting point, but I'm not planning on sticking to it. Colour's all about feeling, and I chose this photo because I like the fresh summery feel. So using it as an inspiration for a colour palette, I'm mostly thinking about how I'd use the colours in an artwork one day, and I don't have a particular project in mind yet. I'm also thinking about saturation and value, and I usually work fairly high key and low saturation, but for this palette I felt drawn to the bright colours. That's why I chose quite highly saturated versions of each hue in the palette. At art school, I read loads of colour theory books and spent many years kind of bound to the rules. So if you're like that, don't worry, you're not alone. I'm always considering what sort of hues I enjoy, and in this particular one, what ones speak to me of summer. And this is different for everyone, of course. So pick colours that work for you and your style. I found over the years that students feel limited by the reference photo, the scene or the object in front of them. Somehow we tend to feel tied to what's already in front of us, but actually we've got all the freedom in the world to wander off and diverge from the reference as far as we want to. But I've discovered that the best way to truly understand and use colour is to play with my art supplies. I make loads of swatches and mixes in watercolour and pastel, without any agenda, just exploring and having fun. It's a great excuse to use your art supplies, and then you get to know them better anyway. I hope you feel free to experiment and play with colour. That's the best way to really figure out what works. So by limiting the palette for your project, you'll end up with a really strong finished artwork. I like to have options in the full value range. I may not use them, but if they're there, then I'm not fussing around just when I'm in the flow, looking for whatever pastel stick or watercolour that I'm after. It's also vital to think about colour intensity before starting. So if I want to add some accents to an otherwise soft artwork, I've got the right colours ready. I try to stick fairly closely to the palette that I've decided on in advance. Having said that, it's fine to add more values, tints or shades in the same colour family. It's still basically the same palette. You always need some level of contrasting hues, values and saturation so you've got something to draw attention to your focal point. But the most important thing is to choose colours that resonate with you. Don't worry about what other people think. And have fun. As you can see, this is just a very simple, intuitive mini abstract sketch. I do lots of these playful experiments and then refer to them when I want to start a large painting. So something like this, I would just glue into my sketchbook so that I know where it is and it's right next to the palette. Thanks so much for joining me and watching today. I hope you created a palette that you're pleased with and maybe a little study as well. I'd love to see it. You can tag me on Instagram at Bernadette.myers. Don't forget to download the PDF with the reference photo and tips. And I've put links to the supplies in the description. If you've enjoyed this, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to my channel. I'm just getting started out with this YouTube channel. So have a beautiful day. See you next time.